Hello my dears, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and tonight I've got another paranormal video to share with you guys. And honestly, the timing couldn't be better. As I was gathering up my things to come and sit and film, the wind picked up. I can smell rain in the air. It seems like a storm may be brewing. Anyway, today I wanted to talk about the old Hollywood actress Jean Harlow and a mansion that she lived in with her husband Paul. Now, I'm sure everyone has probably at least heard of Jean Harlow, maybe. But just in case you hadn't, like I said, she was a Hollywood actress back in kind of the golden days of Hollywood in the early 1900s. And she was kind of the Marilyn Monroe before Marilyn Monroe came around. She was a gorgeous blonde bombshell, and she was just beautiful, and everybody loved her. Her nickname was Baby. And yeah, she was just really, really celebrated. Now, unfortunately, her life was very short. She died when she was 26 years old. And a few years before she died, she married a man named Paul Byrne. Now, he was a film producer. He worked for MGM, the studio, and the two of them fell in love and got married. Now, they moved into this beautiful mansion in Los Angeles, and 2 months, just 2 months after they were married, one day he was standing in a room in their house in front of a mirror, and unfortunately he took his own life. Now, from what I could tell from doing a bit of research, it seems like the pair of them had a very tumultuous relationship, and that maybe it was in some ways abusive on his end. But I didn't really see too many details about that. But what I did find very interesting was that note that he left behind after he died. And I'm just going to read it to you now. It's very short, but I find it very interesting. It reads, "Dearest Jean, unfortunately, this is the only way to make good the frightful wrong I have done to you, and to wipe out my abject humiliation. I love you, Paul. You understand that last night was only a comedy." That's a little ominous. So anyway, after it all happened, it was their butler who found him. And one detail that is very interesting is that when the butler came upon him, instead of calling the police, he called MGM, the studio. And rumors began to fly that he did that because he saw something at the scene that made him think that perhaps there was something more sinister afoot, that maybe he had been murdered instead of taking his own life. So, like I said, those rumors just began to swirl. You know how things do. And then a couple days after that, his ex-girlfriend actually ended up jumping off of a boat and drowning, and it looked like that was intentional. And that kind of just fueled the rumors, and that maybe she had something to do with everything that had happened with him. So shortly thereafter, Jean Harlow decides to leave the house. Of course, you wouldn't want to stay in a house with such a tragic, memory and story connected to it. I'd also read at some point too that 2 other people on the property, like in the pool, had drowned at some point. So there seemed to be a lot of tragic instances occurring on this property and in this house. So from there, time passes. So this was the early 1930s, I believe. Now, a few years after she moved out of the house and moved on, she remarried, and then that marriage didn't work out. And then she had a partner who didn't want to marry her. He just wanted to keep dating, and so they were together. And then she fell very ill. She'd been very sick, very, very sick. And when she was working on the final movie that she ever filmed, I believe she was starring with Clark Gable in that, I think. she just kept getting sicker and sicker. Her complexion turned gray. She found that she was gaining weight despite no difference in her, diet or lifestyle, and she just felt so miserable. She had a high fever, and eventually she passed away, and the cause of death was listed as kidney failure. So now we fast forward. Like I said earlier too, unfortunately she was only 26 years old at the time. But yes, now we fast forward to the 1960s, and another Hollywood celebrity buys the house, and his name was Jay Sebring, and he was actually a celebrity hairstylist, and he moved in there with his girlfriend, whose name was Sharon Tate. They were together for a while, and then eventually Sharon Tate fell in love with Roman Polanski, moved out to be with him. Now, even after she moved out and was with Roman, her and Jay remained very close friends, and they talked all the time and spent time together. And now, if that name Sharon Tate is ringing bells, it's because later on she, along with Jay, who owned the Jean Harlow mansion, would become victims to Charles Manson. And that's a lot. That's a lot of tragedy that can all be traced back to this house in Los Angeles. And one really interesting thing to note as well is that Sharon Tate, at the time of her death, was 26 years old, the same age that Jean Harlow had been when she passed away. So it's just all these little webs that connect the story all together. It's so eerie. Now, to get more into the actual paranormal experiences that people have claimed to have felt in the house, after Peter and then eventually Jean had died, people who stayed in the house, they often claimed to have seen spirits in there, different spirits and presences in the house, things that really just always creeped them out and they found to be very hard to live with. And then later on, when Jay and Sharon did live there, I'm going to read to you now a little blurb of an account that I found while doing some research of things that they felt while they lived there. So this says, right before Sharon fell in love with Roman in 1966, she was spending the night alone in Jay's mansion. She was trying to sleep in Jay's master bedroom, overwhelmed with an uneasy feeling of a strong, unseen presence. She jumped at every noise as she lay on the bed with the lights on. Suddenly, an apparition of a creepy little man scuttled into the bedroom. Sharon recognized the ghost to be of Paul Byrne, who totally ignored her, so intent in his mission to find some unknown thing. Sharon quickly threw on her robe and left the room in a hurry, only to find a more frightening sight on the staircase, leading down to the first floor. About halfway down the staircase, she saw a ghostly form who was tied to the posts with its throat badly injured. Racing past this ghastly scene, she hurried into the living room, trying to find where Jay kept his liquor, as she was feeling the need for a drink. When she couldn't find anything, she suddenly got a strong urge to push on one of the bookcases, which revealed the sought-after bar. Shaking with fright, by this time she poured herself a drink to steady her nerves. She suddenly got another urge to tear away the wallpaper along the base of the bar, revealing a solid copper base. She then walked up the stairs past the ghastly apparition there, past the creepy little man who was now pacing the hallway, back to her bed where she crashed. The next morning, she thought that she had a terrible dream, but realized that it had all happened when she saw the copper base bar and the wallpaper that she had removed. So she went on to think that some entity, perhaps Paul, perhaps Harlow herself, because people had said that they thought that they had seen her presence in the house, so that maybe after she had passed, she went back to that house. And people would specifically note they would see her on the second floor gazing out of a window. So she went on to think that some entity, perhaps Harlow, perhaps Peter, perhaps some of the other people who had died on the property, were trying to warn her, Sharon, of the ghastly fate that awaited her. In 1969, after she had married Roman and was almost 9 months pregnant, she and Jay were together at Sharon and Roman's mansion. Roman was away directing a film when the Manson family invaded the home. And that was the end of things for Sharon and unfortunately Jay. So it really just makes your skin crawl thinking about all of the things that house has seen. And that's only the things we know of. Goodness only knows all of the other things that have taken place in that house, all of the other things that those walls have seen. And it's just, it really makes you think, especially like just any older house that has been around for a long time. You know, we don't know the secrets that they hold. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe. It helps me out a ton, and I will see you on Friday with another book talk video. Bye guys.